Okay. So this is Bill, and I'm one half of the Mike and Bill show. And right now we've got Jim Rumstead, Representative Jim Rumstead, who is the representative for Michigan's 44th District House seat. And Jim is really up on what is going on with state pensions. And he was unable to log in to the program, so he is on the wire. He's on the. We're just going to get an audio out of him, and people can still ask questions if you want to. And so anyway, let's start this out. And so Jim, what about this information now on somebody? Let's say they were absconding with the pension funds. Instead of taking, like people get their pension money taken out of their paycheck, and instead of putting it into the pension fund, they decide to put it in their own wallet, and with forfeiting on a pension. How does that all work?
Yeah, what was the driving impetus behind that bill was the principals in the city of Detroit for the DPS, the Detroit schools, that were caught stealing money from the public coffers. And this is something that we dealt with last session as DPS was careening into bankruptcy, and we're being asked to pony up money to fund a new district and pay off the debts of DPS, which was, like I said, going into bankruptcy.
Mm-hmm.
Every week, practically, a new principal would surface under indictment for stealing money from DPS.
Okay.
So I was asked by many constituents around my district, well, what happens? These people get to steal all this money and they get to keep their pensions on top of it. And I said, well, I'm not quite sure how that works. Let me check into it. And what I discovered was there is a decades-old law that says that if someone is convicted of stealing money from the public coffers of a felony of $1,000 or more stolen, that they can lose their pension. But we could not find a single example of it actually happening. The Attorney General's office thought they had heard at one point that maybe a couple of police officers had lost their pension, but they had no evidence that that had ever occurred. So as far as we know, this was a law with no teeth in it because the judges simply weren't requiring these thieves to forfeit their pensions. So they'd steal the public dollars and then they could retire on a cushy pension. On top of that, many times they have like a 401k style plan. I think it's 401A for public employees. But with that match, that is money that the municipality, the library, the school district, the state has put money into their match. So they have their money, and this is the match from the employer. Well, they were retaining that as well. So the bill that I crafted said that the judges don't have discretion, that if you are convicted of stealing money from the public coffers under a felony, then poof, there goes your pension.
Okay.
The judge doesn't get an option. Also, the employee match, the employer match is also forfeit back to the municipality. So it's a great tool to ensure that those who are out there stealing money from the public are going to pay a pretty severe price.
Wow. So now, how would that all get instituted? I mean, how would you discover something like that where somebody wasn't putting the money in?
Well, it applies to any kind of public theft of public dollars. So, for instance, let's say that somebody is embezzling money.
Okay.
Let's say that somebody is taking a kickback, taking a bribe. That also is considered theft. And because they're taking that bribe in order to screw over the municipality, so they are going to forfeit their pension. So there's many, many cases each year of public employees stealing the public dollars. And every time that they are convicted now, going forward, their pension is retained by the employer.
Okay.
Their match that ordinarily they would get is retained by the employer. So it really is a strong deterrent for these thieves. They're going to be paying a pretty severe price because that pension and that match is oftentimes very substantial. The Attorney General's office has estimated that just the DPS principals are going to lose on just the pensions over $4 million when this law gets enacted, because they have been, I don't believe they have been convicted yet of, or sentenced, I guess is what it is, for this crime yet. So it's something that passed unanimously out of the House, not a single no vote. Everybody recognized the problem, and in some areas of the state where you have a culture of corruption that decade over decade over decade, the theft still continues. So this is a real tool in the toolbox for the municipalities to be able to go back and recover some of that money.
Okay. Is there, we haven't gotten any questions yet, but I'd like to ask you, do you know anything about the 345 pensions?
The 345 pensions?
Yes.
I'm not familiar with that.
All right, how those are,
specific pension.
well, those pensions are causing a lot of municipalities to have to increase their taxes, to pay those, and they always have to be maintained. And when the economy does really bad, that means they need to increase the number of mills that people are being taxed on their property taxes. And there's been talk about, instead of going for a pension, actually to go to a 401k system. Have you, has the legislature talked anything about that?
Quite a bit. The Mackinac Center put out a report recently that had various communities that had underfunded their pensions. Some were down in the 30% funding of their pensions. So you could just imagine the tsunami that is going to hit the taxpayers in those communities if they are not funding these pensions and healthcare liabilities.
Right.
With the healthcare, they're actually even much worse than the pensions. Statistic I saw was they're around 5% funded on average, which is horrific in terms of funding those healthcare obligations. So between pensions that are oftentimes very unfunded and healthcare obligations, you have all the recipe for what's called a death spiral in a community. And that death spiral occurs when, in order to be able to fund these pensions and healthcare benefits, they start stripping money out of the general fund and devoting more and more and more, usually to people who have retired. So they're not to existing, say, police and fire and other services. Mm-hmm. Those are being scythed down year in and year out to be able to fund the now growing exponentially the pension and healthcare obligations that were not funded.
Okay.
And at some point, in order to be able to fund this, they can't just keep cutting services. They also have to start increasing taxes. So now you have services that are bare bones. Things aren't being cared for in the community. Mm-hmm. The taxes are escalating year over year. And then what happens is the productive begin to flee out of the community. That's precisely what happened in Detroit.
Okay.
What you then are left with is senior citizens. Those are some sort of benefits. You simply cannot continue to increase taxes on them because they have no ability to pay ever increasing taxes.
Right.
So then you lapse into bankruptcy. When that happens, depending on what kind of an employee it is, the state may have to backstop the losses. That's precisely what happened with the DPS, is they are considered state employees, and by the Constitution, the state has to pay the bill.
Okay.
For other municipalities, the state does not, the Constitution does not require that the state pick it up, but you could have a federal judge intercede and say the state does have to pick up the cost. And the federal judge in the Detroit bankruptcy made all kinds of changes that were not even legal, but they just pressed them through. So you don't know what's going to happen in a bankruptcy that some maybe New York federal judge who's never been to Michigan,
Right.
is now making all these decisions, and what their requirement is they've got to make the money that is coming in match the money that is going out, and how that gets done, they don't care. They will make it happen. So you could have, very loyal, hardworking police and fire, retirees that were counting on these benefits, all of a sudden ending up with nothing because the federal judge just whopped it all down to make the ends meet.
Right.
So there's a real concern, not only for employees, but taxpayers, not only in the municipalities, but at the state of Michigan. So it's something every taxpayer needs to be aware of. They need to be talking to their local elected officials and say, tell me, how is our pensions for employees funded, and what percent are they funded?
Mm-hmm.
Is this something maybe we need to look at a defined contribution like a 401k style plan as opposed to a pension if we can't afford it? How is our health care funded for retirees? Are we fully funded, or if not, then we need to start devoting some more assets to that, because you don't want to get in that death spiral. At that point, you literally could lose everything. Home values careen and crash down to nothing.
Right.
People lose everything. So it's imperative to deal with these issues.
Yeah, I've heard it's a substantial issue. And then also with the 401k, if the employee decided to go someplace else, they could do a rollover and take their money with them.
That's correct. Now, in the particular bill that I have, where if you are working for a public entity and
Mm-hmm.
you begin to steal the money, the minute that the authorities start an investigation that you've started stealing the money, they freeze the account.
Okay.
So you cannot move it. That actually was a fix that was recommended by Representative Martin Howerlich to make sure that they don't abscond with the money as soon as they find there's an investigation started, that they grab that entire 401k style plan and abscond with it.
Okay.
So that is prevented.
Wow. Is there other issues that you can think of that is going on with the pension systems in the state?
Well, I think we've touched on the major concerns.
Right.
Not only the issue of the theft that just constantly occurs year after year, but also the underfunding. The underfunding issue is something I can't convey to people the enough importance to this issue that they've got to make sure that they are asking the proper questions of their elected officials, or all of a sudden where they plan to retire and live out their lives with a certain lifestyle and income level,
Right.
all of that could be yanked from underneath their feet if they haven't been doing their due diligence and keeping an eye on these pension and healthcare obligations.
Right. And that is the 345 pension. Those are the ones we're talking about, and those are the ones that
Okay.
are causing all the municipalities to have all their problems.
Yes. Okay.
Okay. So, I mean, you've got this legislation now. Is that in the Senate now?
Yes, it's over to the Senate, and the Attorney General wanted to do one final check on a couple of provisions
Mm-hmm.
before taking it up on the Senate, just to make sure that sometimes if you find there's a little tweak that you want to make between one chamber and the other, you can make that tweak and then run it on through the Senate, and that's what the Attorney General is working on now. And then I expect it will be taking up fairly quickly in the Senate, and I don't imagine it having any problems.
You don't think it's going to come back to the House? There's going to be changes?
It could, but if it does, it would be okay. There's some changes that the Attorney General wants. It passed through the Senate. It would come to us and would pass very quickly, and then on to the governor. Okay, and
then how is the governor said? What is his feeling on this? What is your feeling on it?
I think he will absolutely be supportive. When I asked him personally about, within his budget, he was talking about increasing the budgets of some of the cities here
Mm-hmm.
in Michigan, and I said, before this bill was even introduced, well, what can we do to ensure that the stealing that has been occurring in some of these communities is brought to a halt.
Right.
And he referenced the financial manager system that has been built into the city of Detroit, where the entire budget is gone over by a financial review commission to make sure that everything is good before that budget gets passed, and that DPS, Detroit Public Schools, will also be overseen in that same way. But he commented it's very difficult on an individual basis. If you want to stop some individual who's got it in their mind they want to start stealing the money, it gets very difficult. So that was prior to my introducing the bill, and that really reinforced the fact that we need to go after these individuals. So this is exactly what he was referring to.
Okay.
The difficulty of stopping individuals, and this is a perfect way to do it. So I don't anticipate any problems with the governor signing this bill.
Are there any sort of provisions within the bill for punishment other than losing your pension?
No, but they're going to be paying other prices. Just when you're convicted, they go to jail.
That's what I meant. Is there prison time involved, or?
Yeah, this will be in addition to the fact that you're going to be doing jail time.
Okay.
You're also going to lose your pension and your match.
All right. So is there any sort of word about changing those type of pensions over to, like the ones we were talking about, the 345 pensions to the 401k? I would think that people are starting to talk about that because it'll take the burden off of the taxpayers as much.
Yes, I'm hearing that virtually every community I talk to, there is discussion about doing that.
All right.
And many of them are already switching over. Many of them have in the last couple of years switched over. Now, typically it's for new hires, but in some cases they're doing a hybrid plan where they're allowing to keep some of the, what they've earned in terms of the current system, and then the rest of it's going to be made up in a defined contribution, like a 401k style plan. So yeah, they're more and more switching over to it, and it really has to happen. There's, in my district, very few individuals who are receiving a pension anymore.
Okay.
So the fact that the public is able to have that, and the private enterprise is simply rarely offering those anymore, it's definitely going to change.
All right. So if the constituents and the taxpayers want to get in touch, who should they get in touch with? Your office or their legislators, or who should they get in touch with?
At this point, I would say that the most effective thing is to contact their state senator.
Okay.
It's going over to the Senate, and I expect it would go to Senator Jones's committee, which is Judiciary Committee, and that would probably be a great first call, as anyone who's on Judiciary Committee.
Okay.
But even beyond that, all the senators could use a call to encourage them to vote for it.
Okay. Would it be of any advantage to contact Speaker Meekoff's office, or is it not at that point yet?
I would say let's first worry about getting it out of the committee, and then phone calls could be made to the majority leader's office.
Okay.
But yeah, I would focus more on the Judiciary Committee.
Okay. Well, Jim, I wanted to thank you for being available and being able to talk with us. Is there anything else you want to talk about that's going on in the 44th District? I mean, that's off topic from what this meeting was about, but...
Well, just briefly, this coming week, we're going to be voting on body camera bill we'll be hearing a testimony on the body camera bill. We'll be voting on a provision it's actually called a resolution that will add language to the Michigan Constitution protecting the privacy rights of individuals through their electronic data and communications. We will require that a warrant be used in all cases. And there's many parts of the country where very sophisticated military grade equipment is used to surveil private citizens without a warrant.
Right.
And it's a great concern for those of us who like to adhere to the Constitution and the Fourth Amendment and due process. And so this same language passed in Missouri in 2014 by 75% vote of the people in Missouri. And the law enforcement in Missouri has had no issues whatsoever since the passage of this new provision.
Okay.
And so it's protecting the rights of the citizens of Missouri and causing no problem with going after the criminals. And so I suspect we will have a lot of support here. It passed unanimously out of the House last term. Unfortunately, didn't have time to get out of the Senate, but we expect to be passing it out of the judiciary this coming week.
All right. Are there any teeth in that bill as far as if it's found that law enforcement was using surveillance and without a warrant?
It's not specified, but it becomes illegal. And generally, in my experience, if something is illegal, you don't find law enforcement wanting to start dabbling. Certainly, police chiefs and law departments don't want to be involving themselves in illegal activities. So
right.
It pretty much puts an end to it. Where the problem occurs is that there's many departments that say, "Hey, it's not specified
right.
in the Constitution that we can't access this information." It talks about your personal property, your papers, your effects, your person, but it doesn't talk about electronic data and communication. So there's literally departments around the nation that interpret it, but we can do what we want. So it's a very necessary fix to make sure that every single department understands. Yes, go get the bad guys, but pick up the phone, get that warrant before you proceed.
Right. I would think that it would be the same as anything else that's gotten without outside of a warrant, where it would be inadmissible in court.
Yeah. Not only would it be inadmissible, but the individuals who utilize this without a warrant are going to be subject to criminal penalty. So it will put the fix in.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much, Jim, for being on the panel today. And maybe we'll get something straightened out so that you can be on the screen with everybody too in the near future.
Well, I appreciate the time, Bill. Too bad my equipment here was not up to snuff, but we'll get that ironed out.
All right. All right. Well, you have a fine day. Okay.
All right, Bill. You too. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so if anybody wants to get a hold of Jim Rumstead, he's at the 44th District House seat, and you can contact his office directly, and find out more from him. So that's all I have for now, and we'll have this up on the wire real soon so everybody can see it. All right, have a great day. Have a great week.